Hi, I'm Amy and welcome to my channel. This channel is all about merging spirituality and psychology so that you can manifest your relationships. I'm a manifestation and relationship mentor, and today's video is going to be an updated version of a previous video that I did on how I manifested my relationship. And this video is going to go a lot more in depth with the nuances and the actual deep inner work that I did in order to allow this relationship to come in and flourish and show up like I wanted it to. So stick around to the end of the video, settle in, get a cup of tea, get your notepad because I think it's going to be a long one. So let's dive in. So the aim of this video is to give you some reassurance and validation that this journey is not easy, especially if you've got trauma around relationships. This journey isn't for the faint of heart. And I want to also reassure you that it is absolutely possible for you to have your person, for you to manifest a new relationship. And it is my firm belief that everybody is capable of their own epic love story. So those of you that are new here might not know my story, so I'm going to do a quick chronology of what happened and when, so that you've got a picture in your mind of where I was at the time and how long ago these things happened and how long it took for the manifestations to take place. So I met my current partner in 2017 and I knew nothing about the law of attraction, Neville Goddard, anything like that. I didn't know about the subconscious mind. I didn't know a thing about healing, shadow work, inner child work, nothing at all. And I met my partner following a divorce. So I met him around a year after I'd been divorced. And we were going okay until we weren't. And in hindsight, I can see exactly what happened. I was triggered. My fear of abandonment was triggered. I would put my walls up to try and protect myself around this and ended up really sabotaging the relationship. So in 2018, in October, we split up. He ended the relationship after a series of high conflict situations, and the relationship ended. And I was devastated. I was absolutely distraught by this. And I didn't know what to do. He blocked me. There was no contact and I didn't know what to do. And I can remember sitting there on my bed, really, really devastated and thinking, please just take this feeling away. I just want peace. Please just take this feeling away. And literally the day after, I was sort of scrolling the internet, Googling on how to get your ex back. And something came up on Reddit actually about the law of attraction. So I looked at that, and soon followed was Neville Goddard's teachings, and I read the book. I really did inhale the teachings. I studied and studied and studied, and when I put my mind to it, I managed to manifest a text message. And, you know, I'd do sats, I would affirm, I would do self-love meditations, anything to take my mind off the fact that he wasn't here. And it worked. And I got that text message and we did get back together. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. I've cracked it. I don't need to do anything else. But what happened was I actually got sucked back into the relationship again. I hadn't done any work on myself whatsoever. All I'd done was affirmed and visualized. But it didn't take long before it happened again. And in 2019, around the same time, the same thing happened again and we split up. And again, I was devastated. I was absolutely distraught. And this time there was a third party. And I didn't let that actually bother me too much. It was more the feeling of abandonment and the feeling of not having any control that was making me feel so distraught and devastated. And again, I did the same visualizations, the same techniques again, but this time I started to look a little bit deeper. It was still really surface level, but I acknowledged that I had this fear and that this fear was manifesting. So I did my best to try and suppress this fear. I would affirm over it, I would ignore it, I would pretend that it wasn't there. And eventually it did happen. It did happen that he texted me and we did end up back into a relationship. And then in 2020, just as we were going into COVID lockdown, we broke up again for exactly the same reason. So I could see at this point that there was a pattern coming, there was a pattern occurring, but I didn't know how to stop it. I did not know how to break this horrible, heartbreaking pattern. And this time the breakup lasted around 6 months, so it was quite a long breakup compared to the other ones that we'd had. And this time was different because I had thought, right, okay, I know this is me. I know that this is a pattern. I know that I need to break this pattern if I want this relationship. And what followed on was 6 months of really feeling my feelings, and it felt like I couldn't stop them. I didn't know what to do with them. It was like this Pandora's box had been opened, and every single hurt that I'd felt through my entire life was coming up, and I couldn't stop it. I spent the most of the 6 months absolutely devastated, not just by the relationship, but I was devastated by the amount of trauma that was coming up in me. I could see why I'd acted how I acted. I had a lot of shame come up in me, but I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to regulate. I didn't know how to see things differently, to perceive things differently, and let things go. And as that time period went on, I started to think to myself, okay, I can't do this. I need to learn a technique. I need to learn a way that I can actually function without feeling like my feelings are going to take over. It really felt like I was being possessed by this feeling. I was wandering around most of the time crying. And in hindsight, I needed that to happen because I'd resisted these feelings for decades. So of course, as soon as they had the opportunity to come up, of course they did. And I was reliving my divorce, I was reliving my childhood, and I was reliving any trauma that I had would come up. I felt hypersensitive, and it was very, very overwhelming. And I didn't have any help at all throughout that process. After a few months of this, it was almost like a switch had flipped, and I started to get back into myself again. I started to meditate again. I started to self-regulate again, and I started to open my mind up again to this relationship happening. And it did. Within a couple of weeks, he was back and we were back together. And it was clear that time that I had done some healing. I had managed to heal myself in some way. As a result of that, the relationship was okay for many months. I mean, we went along for 18 months to 2 years maybe. And then in 2022, it happened again. Following an argument, we'd split up. Now, this time again was different because I decided that I didn't want it anymore. I didn't want this relationship. The pain was too much. I didn't know how I was manifesting these things. I didn't know how to stop them. And I just had enough. I was ready to throw the towel in, and I let myself sit with that. And for around a month, 6 weeks, I was happy in that, okay, I don't want this anymore. And because I don't want it, I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to really work on my own security. How can I help myself feel and be more secure? I wanted to be this secure and confident person again that had been decades ago. I wanted her back. So I really committed to shifting into that and letting go of anything that was within me that did not mean that. So I got busy. I qualified in attachment theory and how to heal attachment styles. I'd done that. I'd started a business. I'd really committed myself to healing myself. I didn't think anything about the outside world. I didn't think anything about him. I was completely let go of the idea of us being together. And as I was getting more and more secure, I started to feel a lot better. I felt a lot different. But then the desire came back in. And instead of it coming from like this really needy place, it actually came from this confident place of, yeah, okay, I do still want this, but I don't need it. And I was quite happy to, wait as long as it took for this to come in. And it did actually a lot quicker than I thought it would. So it came in within about 6 weeks of the split. We got back together. We discussed what had happened in the past, and I was in a much better place to be able to handle these conflicts that we've been having. I was in a much better place to regulate my emotions. I didn't take everything so personally. I wasn't so attached. I wasn't so afraid of him leaving me anymore because Even if he did, I would have been okay anyway. I'm not saying I wouldn't have been upset, but I would have been okay, and I was sure of that. And actually, it took around 3 months following that for him to put his house up for sale, and then 3 months again after that, he'd moved in with me, and we have been absolutely fine ever since. So that is a quick chronology of my story and how that happened. But there are a few takeaways that I want to get across in this video, so that if you're stuck, you've got some sort of direction of where to go in. So the first thing I want to cover is the difference between techniques and embodiment. And once I realized the difference between these things, this allowed me to actually shift a lot quicker. I had a better understanding of what was going on. And before, I was just purely using techniques. I would visualize, I would affirm, and not really do a lot else, and hoping that it would magically heal me and we'd be okay. At no point had I been actually embodying the state of having what I wanted. I was just visualizing and affirming and hoping that it would change me, but it didn't. I wanted it to, but it didn't. And it wasn't until I decided to actually embody that and actually thinking, okay, who would I be if I had this? Okay, I would be a person who is secure and confident. Okay, how am I going to show up as that moment to moment, day after day, month after month? How am I going to sustain that? How is this going to be my identity? Somebody who I identify as, not somebody I'm thinking about, but something that I'm feeling on a deep level. And what it required was for me to actually let go of all those horrible old patterns that were keeping me stuck in that cycle of on and off again, and creating and manifesting these horrible situations where the relationship would end, because ultimately at the root of that was insecurity. It was my own insecurity that was manifesting in so many different ways, and I felt like I had no control over it. So I had to disidentify with the insecure part of me. And the way I did this was by actually accepting that, okay, I am insecure. These are the reasons why I'm insecure, and I understand why I'm insecure. But how can I actually shift and embody being secure, actually showing up as being secure? What would I think, feel, believe, and behave like if I was that secure, confident person? And as Neville says, it's wearing the cloak, it's walking in that person's shoes. How do you walk down the street as a secure and confident person? And in order to do that, I had to start really uncovering these toxic patterns that were within me. How did I act as an insecure person? What were my patterns as an insecure person? And to let them go, because they weren't serving me in the way that I thought they were. I thought that they were serving me subconsciously, which is why I couldn't let go of them. And I had to commit to letting go of these things. I wasn't that person anymore. They didn't belong anymore in this new identity. I had to handle my fear a lot better. I had to understand that my fear was coming from a place of insecurity. This fear of being left was coming from this identity of being an insecure person, because secure people know that even if they do get left, they're going to be okay. So that it's not something that they walk into a relationship thinking, like I was. I walked into that relationship fully believing that I would get left. And it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I treated him as one that would leave me. I acted in a way that made it more probable that he was going to leave me. So I had to stop doing all of those things in order to really step into that secure, confident space, that inner world that I started to actually believe was true for me. And I was showing up that way day by day. I was showing up more than I was the day before. I started to understand what my needs were and stopped expecting, him or other people to fulfill those needs. I was responsible for meeting my own needs. And that was really, really empowering for me. Once I'd got down that I could actually meet my own needs and I could actually fulfill myself, that was so empowering. And the need and desperation for the relationship melted away. It dissolved, because the belief that I couldn't be happy without him wasn't there anymore. So I had to think about what my needs were and how can I meet them at least halfway. And healing that anxious attachment was one of the best things that I ever did for myself. It was the biggest gift I could ever give myself, because I don't feel nervous in the relationship. I don't feel afraid in the relationship anymore at all. I don't feel like that. And actually it's overflowed into other areas of my life. Friendships are different. My relationship with money is different. My relationship with my own security is different. I trust myself more. I can set boundaries now when I couldn't before. And these are all things that a secure person does. A secure person does not tell stories about themselves. A secure person does not make things mean horrible things about themselves. And I had to really stop doing that. And I'm not saying it was easy. Some parts of it weren't. Some parts of it were so deep within my subconscious mind that I had to really, sit with a lot of the stuff that was coming up, but also process it and also change my perspective on certain situations that had happened in the past, certain traumas, and really process and release that and release this feeling of unsafety, this feeling of insecurity, sitting with it and healing it and giving myself the security that I was craving. And by doing this, it was bringing me more and more in alignment to what I wanted. It was making me more of what I wanted. And alignment is when your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, and your behaviors are in alignment with what you want. And that is what manifests. It's not just the visualizations, because if you're imagining something and not being the person, it's not going to manifest, and you're going to get yourself stuck in this loop of imagining and waiting, imagining and waiting, imagining and waiting, and it's horrible. And there's certainly no judgment here, because I've done that. I've waited months for a text message. So, I get it, and it's not easy, but when you can break those cycles by shining the light on you, not looking for something on the outside, but when you're shining that light on you and thinking, okay, what is within me that isn't in alignment with what I want? What is it that isn't on board with what I want? Maybe it's a fear, maybe it's a limiting belief, but it serves you to sit with that and realize yourself how that isn't true for you. The next thing I did that was so important was inner child work, and I'd resisted inner child work like no one's business. I did not want a relationship with my inner child. But actually developing this relationship with this part of my subconscious was really beneficial, because actually I didn't feel alone anymore. I didn't feel like I was so disconnected to myself, and I felt a protectiveness towards myself again. And when you can connect with yourself on a really deep level through inner child work or through shadow work, you will have such an understanding of yourself that you would never have before. And when you understand yourself and you accept yourself, self-love comes naturally. So, and I never really got this. I thought self-love was affirming that I love myself, that I'm worthy, I'm deserving, but I never really believed it, because this part of me, this inner child, contained all of the reasons why those things weren't true. So by going into inner child work and actually being able to provide myself with the security, provide myself with the comfort, with the consolation, with anything really that my inner child wanted, I started to trust myself a lot more, and I started to see myself a lot differently. I didn't see myself anymore as this unworthy, undeserving thing that just messes relationships up. I started to see myself almost how God would see us. I saw myself as something that was already perfect, that it wouldn't be possible for me to not be wanted, to not be valued, because when I looked at that inner child, I didn't see that anymore. I saw that child as somebody who deserved absolutely everything, that was worthy of the world, was worthy of anything that she wanted. And that really healed that part of me, when I could really start giving myself what I needed and reparenting myself. That gave me such confidence. And a lot of the trauma that I'd suffered in childhood as a result of feeling abandoned, a result of being made to feel unsafe, melted and dissolved, because I was the one who was giving myself the safety, and I could rely on myself now. And I trusted myself more. I trusted myself on such a deep level that it was really, really profound. I was walking around feeling super confident, super secure, because I actually, for once in my life, I had my own back and I could trust myself to show up. And that was really a major thing for me. And if you are interested in inner child work, I have got a video which I will link in the description box about how to start doing this. I've also got a self-study course that covers a lot about inner child work and a lot about shadow work. If you're interested in that, I will link that in the description box below as well. And I had asked in the community tab if there was anything specific that people wanted me to cover, and one thing that came up was, did I ever want to give up? Yes, absolutely. Lots of times I wanted to give up. It was too hard. I couldn't regulate my emotions. I felt absolutely exhausted. So if this is you, I'm there, I'm with you, but I've got you. If you are feeling exhausted, you are trying way too hard and you are not prioritizing yourself. If you're feeling so exhausted with it, you need to take a break, and it is okay to take a break from this. It's not going to run away anywhere. It's not going to not happen because you took a break. In fact, you don't really need to do anything to manifest. You don't really need to be on it all the time or be worried that you're making a mistake, because you don't have to be perfect. Perfection is not a requirement for this. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to be in the state of the wish fulfilled 100% of the time. And if you are doing that, of course you feel exhausted. Give yourself a break. Take a week, 2 weeks, however long you want, and commit to, okay, extra self-love now. How am I going to make myself feel better? Without visualizing, without trying to live in the end, how in this moment can I make myself feel better? What do I need right now in this moment that's going to make me feel better? And prioritize yourself, because when you can start meeting your needs on a moment-to-moment basis, what you are feeding your subconscious mind with is that you're the priority. You show up for yourself. You're seen, heard, and understood. All of these things that you are missing, or you feel like you're missing, you are then going to provide for yourself, and you do that by meeting your own needs. Another big one that came up was how to deal with no contact and no movement on the outside. And I'm not about to sit here and say that, you know, it was a breeze, because it wasn't. It was so uncomfortable, and it's okay that it was uncomfortable. But I think the reason why we think that it's worse than it actually is because we assign no movement with going backwards, and nothing is ever going backwards. We don't go backwards. But I want you to think about all of these patterns that you're breaking. If the outside is a mirror, it's only ever your own fear that's being reflected back to you, your own beliefs that are being reflected back to you. And once you let go of those things, once you start meeting your own needs, so if you sat there waiting for a text that's not coming through, then I invite you to ask yourself, okay, what do I think that this is going to give me? Okay, it's going to make me feel happy for now, but that's only temporary. It's not going to make you feel happy forever. The only thing that's going to make you feel happy forever is you. So what do you need in those moments when you are sat and you can't take your eyes off the phone? And like I say, no judgment at all. I've waited for a text and I know how excruciating silence is, but silence doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. Silence doesn't mean that it's not working. It doesn't mean that you're going backwards. It doesn't mean anything of that. All it simply is it's showing you something that you need to work on. So maybe you feel ignored. You know, how can you meet the need to feel seen, heard, and understood? And being able to sit with that discomfort is a skill. And sometimes it's not easy to sit in discomfort. I mean, anxiety, for example, anxiety is an energy that springs you into action. So you're almost going against your own biology. But once you can discover what the need is behind it, maybe it's the need for connection. For example, how can you feel connected right now to yourself? Can you go and meditate and connect with yourself? Can you pick the phone up to a friend and connect that way? So there are many, many ways that you can actually meet these needs all on your own. You don't need somebody's text message. And how empowering does that feel like when you know that? When you know, oh, I don't need a text message. I don't need this person to show up right now. I'm good on my own, thank you. So finally, the lessons learned from this is that You don't have to be living in the end all of the time. I certainly wasn't. Even up to crunch point of moving in, I still wasn't 100% in the end. I just had this intuition that I decided to trust and follow, that it was going to happen. I could let go of the control. I could let go of the idea that it wasn't going to happen, and realised that this is a done deal. But that doesn't mean that you have to stay in that 100% of the time. And if you think you do, if you find yourself going and visualising, 3 times a day, consider what you're actually trying to avoid. Are you avoiding sitting with a feeling? Are you avoiding sitting with a thought or a fear? Are you doing it to try and pave over an uncomfortable feeling? And also that you don't have to be perfect. In fact, none of us are, or all of us are, depending on what perspective you have. Nobody is more perfect than somebody else. And I think if you only understood that progress over perfection, progress, which is, okay, I'm doing my shadow work, I'm doing my inner child work, I'm doing my best to care for myself, to love myself more. I'm going to incrementally every day move into being more secure and confident. As long as you're doing that, you are on the right track. It's just one foot in front of the other. You're not going wrong. Just because it hasn't happened now doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Silence doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. You're not. By all means, if you feel called to visualize when you feel good, do that, but don't visualize or affirm to try and make yourself feel better. Try sitting with your feelings. Try to practice regulating your own emotions and see where that gets you, because you will find that this way is more sustainable. It is going to get you lasting results. When you are secure and confident, when you can sit in that, when you can lean back and feel your own security and confidence within you, there isn't anything off limits anymore. There isn't anything off limits. And all of these fears that you have, all of these thoughts that you're not good enough or you're not worthy, will melt away. And you'll start to feel less anxious as you're going throughout the day. You'll start to be able to think about other things. You'll start to be able to not worry about your manifestation. So I hope you found this video useful. I realise I did go on a little bit in this video, but I hope you found it useful. If you did and you like my content, please consider subscribing to this channel and leaving this video a like so that other people have access to it, or drop a comment below if you have any questions and I will do my best to answer them. See you in the next video.